Very good afternoon to all. Uh, Before we begin, I'd like to thank Economic Times team for creating India Incorporation Boardroom platform and bringing industry leaders as we have today with ourselves and practitioners to discuss pressing matters of economy. Today's topic is of great importance, largely because it covers over 95% of India Incorporation. Funding and MSME. Can banks and fintech together address the credit gap for small business? Very exciting topic. We're going to spend almost close to an hour discussing about this and getting views from all our esteemed panelists. But just to set the context, we are all aware of the importance of MSME in our economic regeneration, their contribution towards employment creation and innovation. We are also aware that MSME were greatly affected during the past year. Several measures were undertaken swiftly to strengthen the middle layer, as we like to call, of the industry, and we'll discuss that over the course of our chat in the next 45 to 1 hour. But before that, let me introduce my esteemed panelists for today's discussion. We have with us three industry leaders who have been deeply involved and working towards addressing various aspects of MSME ecosystem. I'll start with Mr. Alok Mittal, co-founder and CEO, Indifi Technologies. Alok is the co-founder and CEO at Indifi, India's leading full-stack platform for enabling debt financing for small businesses. Alok is also an active angel investor, co-founder of Indian Angel Network, and on the board of TIE Delhi. Prior to starting Indify, Alok set up and ran Canon Partner Venture investment business. Earlier, Alok co-founded Jobs Ahead. We all know a leading web-based recruitment business in India. Uh, Alok earned a BE in computer science and engineering from Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, and an MS in computer science from UC Berkeley. Welcome, Alok, and thank you for being with us here today. We also have with us Mr. Anup Kumar Agarwal, South Asia Equity Lead, FIG and FinTech International Finance Corporation. Anup leads the private equity and venture capital direct investment in BFSI and FinTech space in South Asia. He has also led investment transactions in both East Asia and Africa. Uh, During the last 10 years in IFC, he has had led several investments across the financial services space in India, including fintech, banks, NBFC, microfinance, housing finance, brokering, PE, VC fund, etc. He has successfully managed exits and has experienced a full investment cycle. Very warm welcome, Mr. Agarwal, here, and thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now we have Mr. Akash Gehani, CEO and co-founder of InstaMojo, which requires no introduction. India's largest on-demand payment platform that allows anyone with a mobile number and a bank account to start an online business. Akash co-founded InstaMojo with Sampath Swain, Aditya Sengupta, and Harshad Sarma in 2012. And with more than 400,000 registered merchants today, InstaMojo vision is to democratize e-commerce and be the 360-degree digital enabling partner for SME in all shapes and sizes. InstaMojo, incidentally, was one of the first startup from India to join the prestigious 500 Startup Silicon Valley Accelerator program. It has also been featured as one of the hottest startup by Economic Times in 2015. Uh, Akash personally is very enthusiastic about building great teams and believes that great leadership is about creating more leaders. In his free time, Akash likes reading and traveling. He is also a football aficionado. Very warm welcome, Akash. Glad to have you all three here.
Thank you, Vivek. Happy to be here.
Now, just to start this, all-encompassing and exciting topic about bank and fintech addressing the credit gap, requirement of MSMEs. Access to MSME has always been a challenge globally. In India, various numbers are being sort of projected, but estimated debt requirement today within the MSME ecosystem stands somewhere around 15 lakh crore to 16 lakh crore. Now, needless to say that the gap is a result of challenges on both the demand side as well as on the supply side of it. Uh, the good part is it has created opportunities for different models of fintechs and NBFC to come into the market and address this gap. However, the significant size even today, remains which needs to be addressed. Let me invite an opening remark from all our panelists, from a point of view of saying what are some of the key aspects that differentiates India from other markets when it comes to MSME financing. I would like to sort of start with Mr. Mittal and then probably move to Mr. Agarwal and Mr. Akash subsequently. Mr. Mittal.
Thank you, Vivek. I think the Indian market is uniquely positioned to drive the bridging of this gap, right? And I think there are two or three things that are happening that are compelling on that count. One, on the demand side, the rapid growth of large online ecosystems is providing the first degree of formalization for many of these MSMEs. So unlike in the past, formalization doesn't mean filing tax returns, but it means being able to accept electronic payments, right? And that footprint is something which can be used effectively to address the demand side, both from a data standpoint, but also from an access standpoint. I think the second key piece of this is the infrastructure. And in terms of public digital infrastructure, India has probably made the most effective investments anywhere in the globe in terms of enabling the credit ecosystem, but also several other functionalities around it. So this massive investment in the public infrastructure has brought down the cost to serve for private players like ourselves. And third, I think unlike many of the Western geographies, the digital lenders and fintechs are not starting with a competing position against banks. They are starting with a collaborative position alongside the banks. And that allows us to marry, the best capabilities of banks, capital risk management, with the best capabilities that the fintechs can bring on board and create a partnership that can truly serve the MSMEs.
Thank you for that perspective. I think you make quite a few important points. Mr. Agarwal, would you want to present some opening remarks with respect to this?
Yeah. So no, thanks a lot, Vivek, and Alok made some very interesting points on the digital side. What I would want to highlight here that certainly MSME is a very, very important segment for the country. There's no doubt about it. And they have been facing challenges in terms of access to finance. And it's not something new. It's been for many, many years. What I would want to highlight here that things have improved over the years, but still a long way to go.
Yes.
And when I say things have improved over the years, if you go back maybe 15, 20 years, you would see that there were only certain types of institutions who were providing finance to MSMEs, largely banks. In the last decade, NBFCs played a very important role and also microfinance institutions, they played a very important role. And then we saw the emergence of fintechs and the digital ecosystem, which is still evolving very nicely, I would say. And a lot of players in the MSME space who are participant in this ecosystem are able to access some alternate way of financing. Yeah. Now, if we, since you asked this question, how do you compare, let's say, India versus some of the other markets? Of course, India is evolving, as I was mentioning, and there is a trend change here. But some of the big initiatives in India, for example, the small finance banks, they have played a huge role, right, in terms of providing access to finance to MSMEs, and also the NBFCs and now the fintechs. But in terms of, let's say, digital ecosystem, I would think we are still to see that scale, which we are seeing in some of the other markets. So that means that there is a huge potential and opportunity.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much.
Make again some interesting point. We've sort of moved ahead. We've moved the needle. We've come, some way in few aspects, but there is a lot to be done. And we'll sort of touch upon that as we move ahead. Akash, your opening perspective on this.
So as compared to other international or more developed markets, one thing that we've seen is historically or traditionally, due to lack of access and lack of options, a lot of MSMEs relied on informal sources of credit.
Yeah.
What that meant is even when they were in a position when they could have got access to formal sources, when they had certain things in place, just because of the nature of history, the fact that they couldn't provide, basically navigate the operational complexities of it, they were stuck in that loop. So your access was always restricted to those sources, and you could never come out of it. But as we've seen in various other sectors like telecom and many others, India has been known to leapfrog, and I think we're seeing the same thing happen in the credit space as well. What we've seen over the last few years is the rise of your data platforms, the rise of digital commerce, the rise of NBFCs, other institutions like small finance banks and all. So I think even in this space, where a lot of development for other countries has been in aspects of credit bureaus, and those essentially those institutions which help you get credit, India might kind of leapfrog some of that and come to more digital native systems. And we've seen a rise of account aggregators and some of these public utilities which are being built in. So I think the future is looking brighter in that sense, and I think the growth from here on should be much more accelerated.
No, thank you for that. I think very, very interesting perspective. And I'll sort of open this now to much deeper debate here, and particularly this question is to Anup, towards you. Uh, MSME today, for the credit uptake to happen, it requires a perfect convergence, as we like to call it, is accessibility, affordability, and attainability. In most cases, when you look at the scheduled commercial bank and then you move down to NBFC or the MFIs, one or more than one of these aspects are missing. In some cases where accessibility is available, the affordability turns out to be a challenge, and so on and so forth. How do you feel this can be addressed?
So, Vivek, this is something very, very interesting, and I always quote this example. I have quoted this earlier also, but I would repeat because, it helps in understanding it quite easily. So, and I would want to mention here about the transport system, and I would want to sort of draw a parallel here with the financial ecosystem. So if you see the transport system, you have the railways, and then you have the large trucks, and then you have the small trucks or the Tata Aces, right?
Yeah.
Now, what do you see? What role do the railways play? They move goods from one point to the other point, but they have their limitations, right? But they are very important, finally, in terms of, putting that large infrastructure in place and moving things from one point to the other point. But then when you have to load stuff through this railway terminals or unload and then move deeper into, let's say, city areas or certain other factory areas or wherever goods have to be moved, then the larger trucks play that important role. But then India is a country with a lot of narrow lanes as well, and deeper areas, and that's where the Tata Aces and the small trucks play a very important role. And that's what is happening, since you mentioned about banks and NBFCs. So, banks are those like huge, or I would say railways, they are able to create that huge ecosystem in terms of getting depositors, raising funds, and then creating that finance which is available to the NBFCs and fintechs, and they themselves are directly funding, right? And these NBFCs, they moved one step further, playing the role of those large trucks, for a large period of time, and they're still playing that important role. And today you see the fintechs, they are like the Tata Aces, but that doesn't mean they're small. The fintechs can really become big and huge. And we are seeing that in many other countries. So, but they are able to sort of go to those niche pockets or unaddressed or unserved markets, which, let's say, banks or NBFCs are not able to do. And that's where, since you mentioned about the point of access first, and they are able to create that access in a much easier way. For bank or NBFC, you need to have a branch, right? It's very difficult to have branches all over the country. We are a large country. So, but through digital methods, the supplier is able to reach out to the potential borrower. The borrower is also becoming smarter, and he's trying to find out, okay, where can they get access to funding through apps or web portals, etc. Now, in terms of affordability, that's a very important point, and that's where unless the money is available at the right price, it's very, very difficult for the borrower also, right? And that's where the angle of scale comes in. What we have seen that as the lenders grow up in scale, their operating costs on an average basis also go down. Their cost of borrowing also goes down, and then they are able to pass on the benefits to the potential borrowers, and that's where the borrowers benefit. So it's a journey. So what I would say, all three of them are playing a phenomenal role. All need to coexist, and collaborate, and try to help the borrowers to meet their demands. Thank you.
No, very, very interesting methodology of transportation and the layering of accessibility today in the country. But I'll sort of pick up a point that you mentioned and pose this to Alok perhaps is today in most industrial clusters and the operators, there's one side of what is available and why is it so the case. But today, with increased focus of cost of doing business, where the entire arena of competitiveness comes into picture, the affordability turns out to be quite a big of challenge. Uh, how do you see this being addressed, at least in the near to midterm? Long term, we are very clear that it is going to be scaling up, and to that extent, your cost of fund is going to go down, and so on and so forth. But how do we sort of address in more short to midterm approach?
Sure. So, as Anup mentioned, I think the two things that the fintechs or digital lenders are focused on creating is access and quality. I think both of those are equally important. The prior solution to access was direct sales agents, but it did not create the same kind of quality that you want in a financial product. For us, we don't see ourselves trying to build, another railroad infrastructure, to then get our cost of capital down and all of that. So what we've built is, the first and only MSME credit exchange in India, where we want to partner with the banks that have lower cost of capital and provide them with enough comfort on the demand side, the quality of the demand that we are generating, to be able to create the right products for the customers. I must say that a lot of the affordability issues in the Indian ecosystems actually are in a transmission of wholesale capital,
yes,
rather than really in the last mile. So India would be fairly unique, and this time not a matter of pride for us, that the consumer affordability is constrained by wholesale transmission of capital. So I do think that policy has a role to play there. Because of use of technology, I think the wholesale to retail distribution is actually getting more and more efficient at a much faster pace than ever before.
Yes. Akash, with 400,000 merchant, definitely a lot of feedback out from the market, and particularly on the matter of these three constituents. I mean, what are your views around the entire accessibility and affordability aspect?
Yeah, a small correction there. I think the number you're quoting is like a million short of the real number. So,
my
I wanted to point it out earlier.
Apologies for that. But that's a great news nonetheless. So,
yeah. So I think we've seen this, right? Most MSMEs that we work with, they definitely need capital, right? They definitely need capital to grow or to manage their business, right? Even from a working capital perspective on a day-to-day basis. What we have seen is the general sources, like the entire process around it, and I'm talking prior to account aggregate, some of these frameworks coming in, which is also still very nascent. So it's not that the situation is like totally optimal today, but prior to this, the entire process of applying for a loan, getting through, getting an approval, and essentially getting disbursed, it's just been very, very cumbersome. And so you pointed out three things, right? I think all of them are big hindrances over there. In one sense, the accessibility is a problem because most of these small businesses do not have access to NBFC, right? Going to a bank is out of the question because again, a bank has multiple other areas or agendas to look at, right? The fact that they're also tasked with, things like inclusion, financial inclusion, the fact that you need to have a certain number of branches, rural areas. So I think the banks are usually tied up with many other uh, contradicting, or rather I would say conflicting requirements as well. So what happens is they don't really have access to them. Over time, when they do start applying to some of the NBFCs and they do get approvals, the cost has turned out to be a big barrier. In our history, we've seen less than less than about 20% of applications actually get approved. But I think the bigger drop off is after that. Out of those 20, less than two or three actually get dispersed, because the time it takes, the terms, the interest rates, and all, they are prohibitive for many of these businesses. So I think in that sense, when we talk about some of these newer frameworks, the fact that a lot of this can be done digitally, uh, you know, you have an account aggregator through which a lot of your financial data can be passed on to the NBFC, which can do its underwriting in a much more efficient manner. I think some of these will make a difference there.
Yeah. No, this account aggregator point is something I think which is coming up at large, within the industry. UK SINA committee report, which is very, very recent, a year or so back, has dealt with it quite extensively, particularly, the issue of underwriting.
Yeah.
And the view that was always emerging was the same template of underwriting what we do for large project necessarily is being largely used for small and medium businesses.
Mhm.
What's your view, and perhaps Akash, you can sort of react to that, and then we'll request Alok to come in this entire account aggregator approach. How open will the financial institution to be able to sort of share this and bring this layer, so that we move from document to data in terms of undertaking the credit underwriting process? Your views?
So I think only time can tell, but as businesses, as we NBFCs start seeing the value in it. So see, I think going back to the earlier problem, right? One of the challenges that we've seen is, and as you also correctly mentioned, like just a minute back, in terms of how the banks look at it, it's the same process which is usually applied to a larger enterprise versus a MSME.
Hmm.
Now you contrast this with the number and diversity of MSMEs which are out there, with the kind of businesses and business models and so on. What we need to see is a lot of more specialized NBFCs coming in, where you have a very specialized approach to one particular kind of business, right? So let's say the entire restaurant space, the kind of business model which they have is very different from, let's say, a wholesaler or a retailer, or some of the other models out there. So what this will do is it will help a NBFC to come up with a much more focused, much more customized underwriting criteria, and then you can use your custom data points which are applicable for it. So if I'm a smaller, let's say a retailer who's trying to sell on, let's say Amazon, or some of these marketplaces, there is certain kind of data which is readily available out there. It also helps the fact that a lot of my tax returns or GST information, all of that is already present in a format which can be easily consumed. Now this reduces the cost for NBFC to work out, and of course, right, they can then build custom models for this instead of trying to build a model which incorporates everyone. I don't need to reach out to 100 MSMEs out there. I know that only 10% of these are my relevant audience, and I'll build a much more custom, cost-effective model for this.
Yeah.
And which is also my cost comes down, and returns are much more, let's
Yeah.
say, predictable.
Yeah, we'll come to that point. We'll hold that thought there. What essentially what I gather from your input is specialized would allow us to tackle the market a lot more efficiently. Whereas a point which Anup mentioned earlier is that scale is extremely important to be able to sort of drive that agenda. So there's a bit of a match that needs to be driven here. But Alok, your view
Right.
on the entire account aggregator approach, and how beneficial and feasible would that be?
So I think the potential benefits of an account aggregator system are fairly well understood, right? Today, Akash mentioned that very few customers are really able to traverse the funnels of applying and then getting approved and so on. And one key step of drop-off tends to be the submission of financial information. I think the fundamental principle with which many of the countries in the world have approached this is to suggest that the financial data belongs to the customer and not to the bank, right? And India has taken, broadly speaking, a similar approach, at least in its PDP architecture. Amongst the banks, we are seeing, two different kinds of behavior here. There are banks who think that ownership of customer data or exclusive ownership of customer data is really their competitive barrier. And so those banks are being protected and will be laggards as far as adoption of account aggregator mechanism is concerned. The good news is we are beginning to see certain mid-sized banks who are volunteering to be early adopters of account aggregator system because they think that that's a lever they can use to grow. So I do think, like any other innovation, especially one which does tend to bring down the competitive barriers, the large incumbents will have a slow reaction to it. But there is an early crop of banks who are beginning to adopt this, and as they start to develop differentiation and gain advantage basis this infrastructure, it will prompt other banks to join it.
And Anup, this is particularly to you, and I would sort of seek to get much deeper perspective around it, apart from a broader role of NBFC. With Atmanirbhar, being today at the sort of center of most of the policy making approach, how do we sort of push the current mechanism of NBFCs to the next level and to the third level? Particularly, the reason why I'm asking this question is that when we come out of the other side of the pandemic, which are hopefully starting to emerge, it is not only necessarily about filling the gap which was pre-COVID, but also trying to address gaps which has been created during the course of the last 6 months. How difficult any newer model? I mean, this is the question that has been sort of grappling, largely amongst most industry practitioners. Your views on this, Anup?
Yeah. So Vivek, certainly in any case, there was a huge gap earlier, and COVID, really adversely affected the situation. And in many ways, it's not only there were concerns on the demand side. What will happen with the borrower? Their credit worthiness. Will they be able to repay what they have already borrowed? Will their business come back? When their business will come back? And those were questions on one side. On the other side, there were also issues on the supply side. If you look at some of the NBFCs and fintechs, then obviously for them the concern was because they were also borrowing from somewhere. They had to also repay. They had their repayment, requirements. So and therefore there were also concerns who were supplying credit to them. What will happen? So it's like the entire chain got affected. Now the good news is we are seeing a lot of positive movement on the economy side, on the business side, and some of the outlook scenarios which are coming out through different research reports that India is likely to bounce back very strongly. So all that means one, we need to sort of, let's say, see some of these businesses to make it simple in two categories. Some of these businesses have really bounced back very strongly. And I just want to share one very simple example. I went to Dadar market to buy some stuff from a utensil shop. And I was generally asking, and this is almost 4 or 5 months back, that how is the business now? And so this gentleman, he said, we are not, this huge amount of business we are seeing. And I was surprised. I asked him what happened. People at home, they are cooking a lot. So they had to replace that with the new utensils and all that stuff. So that has created a huge amount of demand, and he's seeing a lot of customers coming in. So that is one side. On the other hand, you see we all are sitting here in casuals, right? For
Definitely.
example, from home. So very little demand for formal wear, right? At the moment, till we again start going back to offices. So some of those product lines or service lines, they have got affected adversely, but some have really bounced back very strong. And if you see the lenders, they are also seeing this, assessing this. They are also noticing there's a huge opportunity. Of course, they'll have to evaluate credit worthiness of each of the borrowers. But I am seeing, at least with some of the players with whom I interact, that they all are trying to provide funding to their potential borrowing segment. And certainly, if India bounces back very, very strongly, the demand would go even higher. So we'll see, finally how more and more supply of finance reaches to some of these players.
Yeah. Just a sort of annex question to that, IFC is particularly, greatly involved in making resources available, to a large pool of either the business or the financial institution. Have you seen from your experience, is there been a gradual uptake, or what's been your experience in the last 2-3 months on the other side of this entire pandemic?
No, certainly. I mean, we are seeing positive trends.
Okay. That's very, very encouraging. That's very encouraging. Let's now, I think, at a institutional level, of course, there's a lot happening, but let's spend some time focusing on some of the newer models that have started to emerge in the market, right? And both at either a policy level or as a process level. Alok, your particular view on the usefulness of TReDS, one is on the capital side of it and one is on the working capital. While it has seen a gradual uptake, there are resistance, and my conversations with most of the owners of TReDS platform tends to sort of, indicate that it's a bit of an uphill challenge that they're facing. How do you think we should be sort of deepening that aspect?
I think TReDS has been, a great story, and I think a success in as far as the demonstration of specific, licensing and process constructs is concerned towards solving this. Right? However, there are several elements of it which are still constrained, which are limiting the depth of TReDS marketplaces, right? Both on the demand side.
Yeah.
The notion of a seller only being able to access the TReDS platforms if their buyers are already registered, places this, kind of inverted incentive system.
Yeah.
Really, the seller is the one who needs the money, but they are not in control of getting that money. So I think, there are issues of that kind. And then again, on the supply side, the platform continues to be currently limited only to banks, which means that there is an appetite for a certain kind of risk profile. There is the regulatory intent to broaden that to include NBFCs, and my belief is that as that happens, you will start to see depth build up in platforms like this. But for me, above all, what TReDS has demonstrated is this gap in credit that is out there.
Yeah.
And we are often thinking about how do we create similar platforms, but those that are directly serving the underserved, those that put the supplier in charge, in control of their financing destiny, rather than having to get 3 other parties to agree to serve that supplier. So I do think that there are positives of TReDS, and it will gain traction as the depth improves. But it is also an interesting point to draw inspiration from. In terms of building other platforms out.
Yeah, again, a very, very interesting point. You mentioned about this sort of conflict between buyer financing and seller financing, right? And typically, most of the approach today on several platform is more towards addressed towards buyer side of it, and the seller financing is where the real gap sort of lies. Akash, I'd like to sort of pull you in, with the kind of digital payment ecosystem, that you are driving personally and InstaMojo. Do you think this shift is happening? There is a gradual shift to focus on more seller financing, or still the ecosystem is largely revolved around buyer financing?
Positive, I don't really have much of a view on that. While I get the theoretical construct behind trades,
Yeah.
I don't have any key insight into how it's working, for either end of it. So yeah, I'm not sure if I can give a really good answer to that.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fine. I mean, Anup would have some views around that. I'm sure. Anup, would you like to sort of jump in on that?
Yeah, so basically, I believe, Vivek, what you are trying to mention, that when we look at some of these e-commerce platforms, there, when a consumer is going to buy, he or she has a lot of options, in terms
Yeah.
of getting access to finance. But when we see these small businesses, they are supplying goods or services, for them access to finance is a challenge. But this, the supply chain financing side,
Yeah.
and different ways of bringing this on one platform, let's say, and Threads being one of them,
Yeah.
is certainly helping, to my mind. Of course, we'll have to see how each of these players grow over a period of time.
Yeah.
But if you see there what's happening, today you see many banks are there on this platform. You see a lot of corporates there on this platform. You see a lot of these MSMEs there on this platform. And this platform has made things much easier in terms of, in terms of the documents being available easily, and then different banks can see whether they would want to fund some of those transactions. And then obviously things become much easier from the supplier point of view. They know, okay, they have some way of getting some access to finance for the goods that they're supplying, right? So obviously these digital platforms make a huge difference, which was not the case earlier, right? Earlier, now we have to compare. Earlier, same thing was happening, but these suppliers would have to go to any bank or NBFC and then provide certain type of documentation. Then they would get certain type of financing. So these are new ways of financing to meet specified needs.
Yeah.
And certainly it can make a huge difference.
Thank you for that. And it's a perfect segue to very interesting development on the entire partnership and co-origination. On the loan side of it, which sort of allows both the risk sharing as well as on the lending deepening. Alok, your views, and Akash, perhaps you may want to jump in. Alok, please.
Yeah, Vivek, I think we see the co-origination guidelines as one step forward in recognizing this complementarity of skill sets that I pointed out to earlier, right? Of the new innovators who have the digital capability and risk assessment capability, but may not necessarily have the risk management capability and the capital. And pairing that up with incumbents who have spent decades building those skill sets. So I am seeing more and more such partnerships emerge. There is also a set of corresponding risks that are coming up as we navigate some of these new models. As you would be aware, there is an internal working group as we speak around some of the consumer protection issues around digital lending. I think the good news is that the industry participants as well as the regulators have taken a constructive approach towards this in applying regulations early, but with a light hand, so that the market doesn't go astray, but at the same time allowing the innovation to happen. Mm-hmm. So to my earlier point, I do think that one thing that makes India unique in the digital lending ecosystem is this very early trend towards a partnership model. If you look at the American markets, you look at the European markets, for almost 7 to 8 years initially, the fintechs and the banks were pitted against each other. Yeah. Right. In India, from day one, they have been adopting a partnership model from both ends. Yeah. If you look at a market like China, it remained unregulated for a long time, and when things went really sour, that is when everything got shut down.
Yeah.
So I also appreciate the regulators' intent and steps they have taken towards early regulation, but light regulation around things like peer-to-peer lending,
Yeah.
and now around co-origination norms.
Yeah, very, very interesting as to how our construct is sort of more driving convergence rather than either and or situation. Akash, your views on the entire co-origination model?
No, I think it's a great idea, and I think Alok covered all the benefits of it, right? I mean, strategically, a NBFC will provide some kind of expertise in terms of the reach. How do you assess the underwriting for certain businesses? And for a
Mm.
bank side, there are established processes as well as the big factor of cost of capital. So I think it's a good idea to combine the strategic value as both of them do, and to
Mhm.
bring them together. And of course,
Mhm.
like, it's still early days for the entire credit ecosystem. So
Yes.
I think we need initiatives wherein you have different parties who come together instead of being in a in a very competitive, like where they're not really competing with each other but collaborating more. I think it's a great idea, and
Yeah.
we've seen similar initiatives in other in other industries also work out well, or
Yeah.
in a very different way. We've seen how a similar thing leading to startup funding, right? We've seen how over the last few years, these angel syndicates and others have come in. And what this does is, for the buyer, which is, let's say, for a startup, or in this case, for an MSME who's still looking to raise credit, I think it's much better. Like, it gives them a lot more power, a lot of more flexibility. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm a big fan of this.
Yeah, no, no. So interesting times ahead, but you cannot delink the question of NPA,
Right.
and it will be remiss if I don't pose that to this panel, right? Uh, Bad Bank, Alok, big announcement, big discussion, a lot of conversations around that. Your views on the Bad Bank side?
So again, this is one where I do not have the necessary expertise to comment on it. I know that this has been, out there for a long time. So if the government has done it in its wisdom and its advisors' wisdom, that might be the right step.
Yeah.
I do think, though, that the bad bank potentially is a solution to the accumulation of NPAs over time.
Mm-hmm.
The space for how to create, high credit quality, especially as we go out, further to the west in terms of dealing with new to bank customers, new to credit customers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that does present a significant opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And to the point that Akash was mentioning earlier, the place where we are finding incremental value to be added to the credit approach is really in segmenting and sub-segmenting the SME space.
Mm-hmm.
And reflecting our understanding of each of those subsegments into the credit algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that the technology and data infrastructure that is available now allows for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that more and more of the small ticket size lending in the MSME space will gravitate towards such specialized algorithms rather than broad-based horizontal underwriting.
Yeah. So, I think there's a consensus towards being a lot more specialized and a lot more targeted rather than, but I think perhaps that's the way to go. But there has been this model that has been being tested for now a long period of time, right? Using networks of partners such as postal networks, the banking correspondent agents, and so on and so forth, at least beyond the tier 3 cities, to be able to address those requirements. In some cases, yes, there are success stories, but how far and how deep has that sort of moved? Anyone? I mean, Akash, you want to sort of come in first, and then perhaps Anup can take it up.
So I think they are vital in some aspects of of the leg, right? But having said that, what we've also seen is, especially with the lockdown coming in, a lot of things have moved digital in terms of in opening an account, or how much of it can you do digitally. And I think the more and more that we go down that road, I see the utility of your correspondence to be decreasing over time.
Hmm.
So it's not that there is no value there, or there is no benefit that they provide, but I think it's a diminishing return over time, is what I feel.
Yeah, so I'll just sort of add to that, because the question of increasing every layer also increases,
Yeah.
both the difficulties and to be able to address. But Anup, would you care to comment on this?
Yeah, I mean, this is Vivek, adding further on what Akash was just talking about, and of course, at the very beginning, I was mentioning that, India is a large country and we have deeper markets, right? And reaching out to some of those deeper markets is extremely difficult, right? For some of the existing traditional players. Because of various reasons, and the most important is, okay, in terms of operating cost, right? So will you have enough business to, sustain? So, and these are some good alternative, I would say, paths or, uh, approaches to reach out. So if you look at a VC, for example, they and this is going on for a long time, right? Some of them have also experimented in terms of sending their team to some of these remote parts on motorbikes with the POS machines, helping the potential customers, do transactions, right, on predefined intervals and so on and so forth in terms of timing and all that. We also see now that the existing setup which is there in terms of, let's say, a grocery store or a mobile shop and all. So these entities have some presence there, right? There's small players there, and they are also being taken into the entire ecosystem framework. Otherwise, if you see somebody who is sitting so deep, if they have to come to a city and have access to finance, in terms of traveling cost, time, and all that, it becomes so difficult, right? So certainly, I am seeing very important role being played by VCs and also the postal network, right? So because much deeper presence across the country. So they have the ability of making a huge difference, right? And probably they are already making a huge difference.
Yeah. Thank you. So this is quite engaging, and I hope we had a lot more time to be able to sort of get into a broader discussion. But I would like to, despite I'm being told that we are way above our time, but one perhaps last question, Alok, to you is, and this is particularly a very, very passionate subject in terms of document to data. Which seems to be one of those node, while it's not the answer to everything, but to a large part, both on the operating side, cost, risks, and to a large extent the adoption and uptake as well. How do we sort of expedite that? I know it's happening incrementally, I know it's happening gradually. Any wisdom words to expedite that?
I think there are a couple of things that are getting disrupted there, right? So one, in context of your previous question, earlier having indirect channels used to mean that your visibility of data and your reliability of data is reducing. I think that is no longer true, right? Because data channels have become direct even if your acquisition channels are indirect. And I think that is a big enabler to re-intermediation of financial services. And I think that is a key lever to take financial services to every citizen of the country, right? It is not going to happen by building dedicated channels for delivery of financial services. I think the second interesting part of this is if you step back and think about what the banking system has done over a few hundred years, is they have pulled financial services outside of the natural business ecosystems of borrowers. Right, and that is why the problem of information arbitrage crops up. Right, when a trader is selling to a retailer, there is no information arbitrage. Information is perfect. So now we are excited about the prospect of using those people as channel and essentially circumventing the information arbitrage by being in the flow of information as it happens, rather than for trade to be conducted in one part of the retailer's life and then financing happens in another bank branch. So I do think that this direct data connectivity and the rise of ecosystem commerce will reduce the information arbitrage while increasing acquisition-oriented intermediation.
Some very interesting, conclusion all of you made there. Financing cannot be very distant from the trade. I mean, the closer it is, the better it is going to be in all senses. But thanking all my panelists here. Some very, very interesting point. The wholesale transmission to the retail side, with Alok mentioned. Anup, you sort of bringing out the point as to how each layer is extremely important, and the analogy of transport. I'm going to take that away and sort of be there for a long time. I haven't heard that in a while. Akash, the entire view around how the cost is more dependent on how specialized do we get. But we sort of debated on that. We'll sort of take up in some other time. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for those insights. I've learned a lot, and I look forward to interacting with you all sometime near soon. Thank you so much. Thank you, Alok. Thank you.